Okay, here we are with homework 4.02. Very similar to homework 4.01, only the inequalities are getting a little more challenging to solve. But the same idea, we're going to solve and then graph our answer. All right, so if we take a look at this first one, we've got to start with some distribution. So we've got 3 times both of those pieces there. So that's going to give us a 15 minus 3x plus 2 is less than 8. Remember, just kind of reviewing from last time, less than sort of looks like an L, so there's our less than. Whoops, I should probably be good if I could spell less than, and then the greater than symbol, if you get a little creative and put a little loop there, sort of looks like a G, so that's our greater than. Just kind of reviewing those really quickly. All right, there's your greater than symbol, there's your less than symbol. All right, so back to the problem. 15 minus 3x plus 2 is less than 8. All right, we're going to combine our like terms. We can combine both of those because they don't have variables next to them. So that gives us 17 minus 3x is less than 8. If we this is a positive 17, so we can subtract 17 from both sides. Negative 3x is less than negative 9. And now we're going to, final step here is divide by a negative 3. And this is where that extra little piece comes in. But whenever you divide or multiply by a negative number with these inequalities, you have to remember to flip your symbol. So it's going to go from being a less than to an x is greater than, and then a negative divided by a negative is going to give us a positive 3. So we're left with x is greater than positive 3. So if we go up to our grid here, I'm just going to put a 0 here, I'm going to put a 3 here, put a negative 3 over here. Again, you can number as many as or as little as you want. Actually, not as little, at least 3. Now, x is greater than 3. There's no equal sign here, so we're going to use the open circle, which tells us that 3 is not part of our solution set. And then if it's greater than 3, we have to go off to the right because those are all the numbers that are greater than 3. Right. If we look at number 2 here, there's no distribution, but we do have variables on both sides, so we want to get those on the same side. We're usually going to move the smaller ones, so subtract 2w, subtract 2w. 3 minus 2 is 1, so I could either write that as 1w, or I could just write it as w plus 2 is less than 5. All right, if I subtract 2 from both sides, I'm going to end up with w is less than 3. All right, so pretty similar to the last one, but slightly different when we look at our final answer because this was x was greater than 3. This is w is less than 3. So again, we'll go over here. I'll do a 0. I'll do a 3. I'll do a negative 3. And then since w is less than 3, that's going to be the open circle, since there's no equal sign, and then less than would be off to the left this time, because those are all the numbers that are less than or smaller than 3. Okay. Let's take a look at number 3 here. 3m plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 5 parentheses m plus 2. So let's get started with our distribution. All right, that's going to, both of those, so we've got this just comes right down. 3m plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 5m minus 10. Okay. Variables on both sides. We're generally going to move the smaller variable, avoiding negatives whenever possible because with inequalities, it's just one more thing you have to remember. So plus 5m, plus 5m. 8m plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 10. Subtract 6 from both sides. I'll just go over here. 8m is less than or equal to negative 16. Divide both sides by 8. M is less than or equal to negative 2. So again, if we bring this up to our graph here, I'm going to put a 0, I'm going to put a 2, I'm going to put a negative 2. because we have the equal sign, we're going to need a closed circle. And then this is saying m is less than or equal to -2, so we want all the numbers that are less than -2. So that's going to be down in that direction. All right. Last problem on the front. 3 parentheses 2 plus r is greater than or equal to 15 minus 2r. So again, we're going to start with our distribution. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 3r is greater than or equal to 15 minus 2r. All right. Variables on both sides. I'm going to move the smaller variable, so that's a plus 2r to both sides. 6 plus 5r is greater than or equal to 15. We subtract 6 from both sides, minus 6. We get 5r is greater than or equal to 9. Divide both sides by 5, divide both sides by 5. R is greater than or equal to, and if you're thinking that's not going to go in equally, you're right, it's actually going to give us a decimal of 1.8. And I'm going to leave it as a decimal because I think it's a little easier to graph when it's a decimal as opposed to a fraction. So how do we graph it when we have a decimal? The way that we're going to do it mostly in this class is we're still going to set it up the same way. So there's 0, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Let's just go on the negative side too. There's -1, there's -2, there's -3. All right, so you have to ask yourself, what two numbers does 1.8 fall between? All right, and that would be between 1 and 2. It's bigger than 1, but it's not quite as large as 2. So I'm just going to put a dot, and I'm going to put a closed dot. Why am I putting a closed dot? Because there's an equal sign here. If there had been no equal sign, I would have made it an open dot or an open circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little label above this and say, all right, this is point 1.8. That way, if somebody's looking at my graph, they know exactly what it is. Because otherwise, it's hard to tell, like, is that 1.5? Is it 1.6? Is it 1.7? So I'm just putting that little label on it. And then if we look at this, r is greater than or equal to 1.8. So that's going to be off to the right because those are all the numbers that are greater than or equal to 1.8. All right, let's take a look at the back. All right. There's just a little translation here. All right, so we're going to start kind of practicing translation. We have -2 is less than x, and then the sum of 5 and x is greater than 9. So let's do these one at a time. Now, less than is probably the trickiest because there's two phrases that we have to be familiar with. There is less than, and then there is less than. All right. Less than is what we did at the start of the year. That's when it's subtraction and you have to kind of turn around the order. We called that our turnaround word. Is less than is actually the inequality, all right? And if you remember with equations, is was always our key for like an equal sign. So the is still telling us like the midpoint of our problem. It's telling us, you know, the left side from the right side, but now we have to keep reading to figure out what symbol we're actually going to use, because it's not necessarily an equal sign, it's more likely one of our inequalities. So when we see -2 is less than x, we're not talking about subtraction, this is an inequality. -2 is less than x. It's that word is there that's kind of our key. If we look at number 6, we have the sum of 5 and x is greater than 9. So the key there is knowing that the word sum is addition. So this is 5 plus x, and then is greater than, there's that is, so that's kind of our midpoint, that's separating our left from our right, and then we need a greater than symbol, is greater than 9. Okay, so those are those two translation problems. All right, have a good day.